at Ministry Days, me, and at General Assembly. Kim will take care of that part. It was in Columbus, Ohio this year. And you might think that in light of the events of this week and their accumulating weight, that we might have considered changing the sermon topic. Unfortunately, it is as applicable to our experiences, I think,
Yes.
today as it was last week and the week before. In that sense, not much has changed. Although that will be far more directly evident, I think, in Kim's reflection than mine. So Ministry Days is when all the ministers get together, preceding General Assembly. We worship together, we converse together, which is where I find a great deal of my own refreshment and challenge is in those casual conversations. And we usually listen to some programming, and there's worship and culmination in the Berry Street lecture. So what came out of Ministry Days this year was some controversy, or at least some discomfort. Not really even controversy, just some discomfort. And it's discomfort righteously come by. So, I don't even remember which worship it was, but in one of the worships, this is ministers worshiping together. It's a tough crowd, by the way. And you try to turn your judgment off a little bit and just be in the moment, and yet, right, of course. So in this worship, I think we sang Standing on the Side of Love or Stand By Me. And we also sang the song that we just sang, Guide My Feet. And there may have been another song with similar metaphors. And in the middle of that worship, the ministers who were not able to walk, who were on motorized transport or some other assisted form of locomotion, walked out or rolled out. They rolled out. And highlighting what for them was painful language that they did not feel included in. Now, okay, everybody who wants to, I give you permission right now to roll your eyes. This is usually the first reaction, right? And we practice mindfulness so that we could be mindful of our reactions, right? This was my first reaction. I was like, oh, come on, dude. Can we sing anything? And even some ministers went through the hymnal and said, okay, let's go through the hymnal and look at any language that might be offensive, literally or metaphorically. And there was none. Like, he got to him like 14. It's like, I'm stopping because everyone that I've come across so far has something. I mean, Amazing Grace, I was blind, but now I see, equates, right, insight or wisdom with the ability to see, right? So we know in some ways that these are metaphors, right? We know they're metaphors, but we also have to listen when people express pain to us. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that we're never going to sing or we're going to rewrite all the hymns and everything's going to be guide my feet while I whatever this race. But we might do a better job of acknowledging that, hey, you know what? This song has some metaphors in it that may cause some of you to feel a little bit left out, or this song comes from this specific tradition. Simply listening to what people say and acknowledging that what we're about to sing, hey, it's a metaphor. I hope you feel welcome in it. If you don't, I hope you feel welcome to tell me so afterwards. Things like that, right? So just opening ourselves to this conversation, not rejecting the conversation out of hand because it makes us feel uncomfortable, or because, an issue in some ways is we love this song. One of my colleagues is a marathon runner, and that song, he sings while he runs. It's meaningful to him, right? So what do we do when words that we say and love, songs that we sing and love, cause pain to people that we know and love, or people that we don't know, but know we should love? That's the conflict. And I don't think there's a really easy answer. But Unitarian Universalists say that we're good at holding things in tension and living with the not easy answer. So the idea here is to listen, I think. That's where we start. To listen to the pain of others. And that is so needed in our culture right now. I mean, this is a window into a phenomenon that this country needs. And if we think that we are enlightened enough to not need the admonishment to open our ears and listen to other people, we've got another thing coming. That is not a helpful point of view. The listening is ongoing. The damage of 300 plus years of cultural oppression is not undone, probably in our lifetime. We're not going to see that mountaintop, but we have to keep climbing. And what that looks like is deep listening, right? So the other not controversy, what did I say earlier? The discomfort, thank you, that we encountered was the Berry Street Lecture, which is, by the way, this is super cool. The Berry Street Lecture is a lecture that's given every year at GA, and before GA it was given every year dating back to 18-something. It is the longest ongoing lecture series in America. So that's cool. I like that. It gives us some traditional depth, I think, and bragging rights. I like it. So anyway, and they're always very compelling. I think they're always delivered by minister. It's open to ministers and all the GA attendees, because that's the first day of GA, so everyone kind of shares that space. And they're always very interesting, high caliber. This one was about clergy misconduct, specifically sexual misconduct, which is a problem everywhere, including in Unitarian Universalism. And it used to be this sort of good old boys network, or not network, but club, where ministers would serially marry one of their congregants, and then divorce, and then marry, and then divorce, and then marry. Or just abuse their power in some way, or take advantage of their power in some way that resulted in romantic dalliances. So the woman who delivered the lecture, her name is escaping me right now, but she encouraged us to do a power analysis. This is not necessarily a sexual problem, it's a power problem. And in fact, the idea at one point was that this would change when we got more women ministers in the pulpit. It has not changed. The numbers are still the same. Well, the numbers perhaps have gone down, but the proportion is men and women equally. So it's about power and privilege, that's right, which is an excellent window into, I mean, that word is a word that's circulating through our culture right now, privilege, right? So we could apply that systems analysis and that power analysis and the knowledge that damage done in a system stays in the system. So churches that have had sexual clergy misconduct in the past, and we're talking 50 years ago, have the ramifications of that are still ongoing. There is, in fact, a diagnosis that is possible for our sister congregation, our kindred congregation on 22nd Street, because they had sexual misconduct decades ago. But they are a challenged congregation and have been ever since. And that damage stays in the system. So we have had some damage in our cultural system, in our national system, that we are seeing manifest before our eyes in horrible ways. And it has always been manifesting in horrible ways. We just now have the media to see it, right? So these two things, the invitation and admonishment to listen deeply, even after it, your initial reaction is to push away, is to think a complaint ridiculous. We have to go beyond that and listen to the pain being expressed. Just because it's not our experience doesn't mean that it's not absolutely real and needs our attention. And then to pay attention to our systems, our family systems, our church systems, our governmental systems, our cultural systems. The solutions are not apparent. But I think listening is the first step. Listening would include listening to another's pain and a power analysis of whatever system that tends to be in play at that moment. So, the conversation amongst ministers about all of this is ongoing. And there are many different reactions to those two sort of highlighted uncomfortable moments. And we're in process as a collegial group. But that is what happened at Ministry Days. That is where I came out of it thinking, and coming out of that and into the last week has proven to be, I'm grateful that I had those experiences that were lifted up to me, and also it feels like those experiences were painful, and that pain mixed with the pain of this past week because they were very similar in some fundamental way. So that is the state of your Unitarian Universalist ministerial leadership cohort across the nation right now.
Good morning. Being asked to reflect on my first General Assembly as an attendee, as a delegate, and as the primary representative of Mountain Vista Unitarian Universalist congregation, while having had financial support and participation requested by Black Lives Matter congregation of UU, and now vis-a-vis all of the horror and pain of last week's violence, I was overwhelmed with the question of how to distill my experience and explain it to you and everyone. So I broke down into three main questions. What is happening now with Unitarian Universalist Association Justice Initiatives? What are our goals in moving forward with social justice work? And what is necessary for all of us to take responsibility in how we support or impede that social justice trajectory? The first question, what is happening with UUA now? As a delegate, I was able to participate in the democratic process and learn about UUA's financial status, actions taken in leadership, and the direction of our social justice efforts. I observed and voted on administrative actions and organizational issues in the general session. So this I will just simply report out. The voting body decided that the congregational study action issues are escalating inequality and the corruption of our democracy. The actions of immediate witness were decided to be building solidarity with our Muslim neighbors, gun control legislation, and protecting and supporting transgender and gender nonconforming community. The most contentious vote was on the proposed business resolution, divesting or screening out investments in corporations complicit in the violation of human rights, particularly Palestinian rights. A 2/3 majority was necessary to enact the resolution, and we did not reach the majority, so it did not pass. But I enjoyed being engaged in the process of an evolution of UUA, and the GA helped me comprehend all of the components and the multidimensional organization that we are a part of in profound ways. The second question, what are our goals moving forward in social justice work? The diversity of justice topics that I and attendees were exploring together was exciting. The range of workshop issues included interfaith connections, ending racism, and fostering climate change organizing. Some of the lectures I attended were Black Lives in Unitarian Universalism, Action for Immigration Justice, and Bridge Building Across Difference. My favorite workshop was Escalating Inequality and the Intersections of Faith, Race, and Class. Doing social justice work was an intersectionality, with an intersectionality component, means recognizing the whole person and not just the individual identities they hold, and understanding the framework of interdependent systems of discrimination and disadvantage. This requires moving beyond categorical thinking and demands changing the paradigm of seeing injustice around race and ethnicity, socioeconomic status, sexual orientation, gender identity, disability, and faith as challenges to be dealt with individually. Fighting for liberation and equality means making sure all of the different parts of ourselves are to be respected and cared for. I'm proud of all the efforts UUs are making in examining new facets and means of creating a more just society. So the last question, what is necessary for all of us to take responsibility in how we support or impede our social justice trajectory? When talking with Reverend Ron about how to convey my experience of attending GA as a Black UU, I expressed some concern about how to talk about it. I spoke with other Black UUs at GA about microaggressions that I and others have experienced, the implicit and explicit racism subverting our justice efforts, and the frustration of feeling our grievances are being discounted. How do I broach these issues without sounding accusatory or indicting of my European American siblings? And this question is not limited to Black Lives Matter movement. It is one that we must individually and collectively meditate on. In one of the lectures, a panelist talked about how Nazi extermination camps were in cities throughout Europe. And the smell of burning flesh is undeniable, yet over time, city dwellers learned to ignore them and go about their lives, dismissing signs of atrocities out of habit of acquiescing. We were asked, what ovens are we walking past? What injustices have we turned a blind eye to? When are we finally going to do something about guns in this country? About the intersectionality of guns, racism, and mental health? When will all lives truly start to matter? When will we wake up? In the service of the living tradition, Reverend Dr. Bill Sinkford touched on the concept of the myth of innocence, or the cognitive dissonance that motivates a person to replace one's ignorance with a feeling of innocence as a means of establishing deniability and entitlement. The myth involves conflating Martin Luther King's dream of equality with the American dream that opportunities are equally accessible and free from the tyranny of oppression. This also includes folks believing in the power of love to justify trite responses in lieu of action. And I'm not one to point fingers, especially since I have my own self-reflection to do. Where are my blind spots? For example, I learned at several GA workshops, we need to be increasingly mindful of using gendered language that is exclusionary of the transgender community. Using siblings to replace the word brothers and sisters, or Latinx to replace the words Latino and Latina, are shifts in my own cultural consciousness that took some getting used to. I also have an aversion to working with people that I don't particularly agree with politically. But I was reminded at GA that one of our principles is honoring the inherent worth and dignity of every person. As UUs, it is our job to extend grace and love to law enforcement, to Donald Trump and his supporters, to the Pulse nightclub killer, to Westboro Baptist Church, and everyone we are reluctant to be in community with. Our faith is aspirational. So doing justice work isn't easy, and it can be overwhelming in complexity. The work demands that we stop dismissing or denying what needs to be done because it's confusing or painful, or it forces us to face truths we would rather avoid, or simply because it's too hard. We must educate ourselves, press on, support each other, and remain in community while our differences are resolved.
So we have work to do. We have people to include. Those people include those we are trying to help as well as those who are working against us. We cannot answer fear with fear and expect anything less than violence. And yet we cannot hide our head in the sand or be naive. We cannot lose our reason. We have to hold all these things in tension. And frankly, I'm not entirely certain how to do that. You know, my kids saw Finding Dory the other month, a little while ago. I didn't see it, but the thing that I know about it is that there's a little fish in there that keeps on saying, keep swimming, keep swimming. So I think maybe you should all go see Finding Dory. And tell me if it makes sense. But the phrase keep swimming comes to mind. And look, we're going to do this work, and I know that I'm going to say some things wrong. I know that I will unconsciously and unintentionally cause offense, right? But we keep swimming. We can't back away from it just because of that. And each little bit of pain that I cause, I also know is an opportunity to learn and to move into deeper relationship. So let us keep swimming, and let us begin, I don't know, was going to invite you to pray by making a transition between swimming and praying, but I don't think it's going to work, so I would just invite you to pray with me now.